I'm Brenda Earl-Stokes, the owner and creator of Piano Skills for Singers and Piano and Voice with Brenda. Frequently I'm asked what's the hardest part about playing the piano, and I would say the number one answer is finding time to practice. And even more than the cost of piano lessons or music training, it's really the practice part of it that can be such a hang up for so many people. And so this little video is going to share a handful of tips that I have to help you to establish the practice habit. One of the things to think about really is that when you're starting something new, if you're taking lessons, if you're practicing or trying to practice more regularly because you're building new skills, or maybe you're taking one of my online courses and you really want to get the best use out of it, is establishing the habit of practicing. And there's a whole bunch of really terrific books. One of them is The Power of Habit, that talks about how you can really make a difference in your life by establishing patterns of habit. And then another book, which I'm sure I'll vlog about another time, by Gretchen Rubin, who I love, and it's called The Happiness Project. And she talks about how there's so many things that we want to do in our life. It can be very hard to do those things if we don't create some kind of habit for them. So here's a few ways that you can start to create the habit for yourself. The first thing that you can do is keep this in mind. It's better to do a little bit every day or almost every day than it is to do a lot on 1 or 2 days. Okay, so spending 20 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week is going to be so much better than spending 3 hours on a Saturday, for example. And the reason is it takes time to be able to really learn information and to get it in your fingers. And it takes time for that to all kind of sit in. It also, you tend to, and a lot of education experts will tell you that it's better to spend focused energy for a few minutes rather than to sit down for hours, which is a lot of very wasted energy. And so if you think about really having little small bursts several times or every day, several times a week or every day, is going to be better than that marathon practice cram session. Okay, think about how the cramming that you did in school and how you probably didn't really get all that much out of that. Here's another little tip that is helpful, is to start small. It's very easy for all of us, and I think of this in my own relationship with exercise, to say, okay, that's it. I'm going to exercise an hour a day, every day from now on. Well, it's easier to say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes every day practicing than it is to commit to an hour a day or more. If you set up little wins for yourself to be able to say, well, wow, I've just practiced every day for 15 minutes for the last 2 weeks, then that's a successful thing. You can feel good about that, and then you're more likely for that to stick, rather than doing this thing where you say, I'm going to practice an hour every day no matter what, and then 4 days into it, you've already failed and you've kind of given up. It's sort of the practice equivalent of like being on a diet and then eating a pint of ice cream. It's like, well, I screwed up. I'll just quit. All right. So that's a good way to do it. Another way to really try to get yourself practicing would be to schedule the time. If we don't schedule it, it doesn't get done. If you're anything like me, if I don't write it in my calendar, if I don't put it in my phone with a little alarm that goes off, then there's a very good chance that I'm going to find about a million other things that I need to do instead of the thing that I'm working on. And so what you can do when you're doing the rest of your planning for the week, whether you use Google Calendar or iCal, or you use a phone, or you use an old-fashioned paper calendar, is look through your schedule for the week when you're scheduling other things and figure out when you're going to be able to put your practice time in. So you could say, okay, Monday night, there's nothing going on. I'm going to schedule that in, or, Wednesday at 3 o'clock, I have an opening, and that will be my time to practice. Since so many of us are in lockdown right now, if you're still in quarantine right now for the COVID-19 pandemic, and you're working from home, you actually have an incredible opportunity now to maybe squeeze these things in the middle of the day. So that's something that you can think about it. Okay. And then the last little piece of advice that I can give you about this is to think about coupling your practice into another part of your routine. And so maybe if you have dinner at 6 o'clock, maybe this is something that you could do after dinner or before dinner. You know, you throw it in the oven and then you have 15 minutes then to practice. Maybe you have calls scheduled always at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So maybe after those calls or before you could, if that's the nature of your business. Or if you generally snuggle down around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock to start your Netflix binging, then maybe you could say, I'm going to practice 30 minutes of piano before I, settle down to do that kind of thing. Or maybe Saturday mornings at a certain time. I mean, those are all things that you can do. Many of you know that I've been teaching my son. My son is 8. I've been teaching him piano since he was 4. And one of the things that really worked well for us to be able to establish the habit is that when he was still going to school before quarantine, we had to leave the house at 8:15 every morning for him to walk to school. And so we worked towards establishing the habit that at 7:30 every morning was when he would do his practicing. So we centered the morning, because he's an early riser, a very early riser. And so at 7:30 in the morning, we had it worked out so that at that time he'd be sitting at the piano bench ready to work, and he would practice from 7:30 until around 8 o'clock, and then we still had 15 minutes to kind of negotiate the rest of the things. Now, I don't think you should get up at 6 o'clock if you don't have to do that, but that's just one example of something that has worked so well. And it has worked so well for us that until this quarantine situation happened, at 7:30 in the morning, he would often be sitting at the piano before I was even ready for him. So establishing that habit is a really helpful thing to do. And the goal with the habit is that you stop thinking about it. It stops being something that you have to put a lot of effort towards, and you can just sit down and do it. So those are a few solutions that you can use to start to create the practice habit. Remember to do a little bit every day instead of trying to do a lot one day. Start small at first, so try to see if you can commit to 10 or 15 minutes first, and then once you've established that habit, to start to nudge it up a little bit, to try to schedule the time in your calendar so that if it's on your calendar, you will do it, and also to see if there's a time of day that works best for you where you could squeeze it in. So once again, I hope these tips are helpful for you. I know for everybody, practicing can be such a hard thing to do, especially because we have such busy lives. If you think about how much time you probably spend in sort of wasted time, scrolling, FaceTiming, Facebooking, social media-ing, channel surfing, I think if you really look at the way you structure your time, you will be able to find some time in there. And I love the idea that instead of spending 15 minutes kind of mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, instead you could actually be developing a skill. And it really doesn't take a lot of time to develop your piano training. It really, from my experience, you just need to commit to doing a small amount every day. So I hope that was really great information for you, and it gives you some inspiration for going forward. And tell me what some of your tips are or your hacks for putting piano practice or music practice into your life. I would love to hear what you have to say about it. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, make sure you subscribe and click below. Have a good day.